to be safe, right?
Yeah. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm here with Nicole Maldonado Arendt, and she's a licensed midwife, Puerto Rican descent. And she's also based in Florida. She's been attending birth since 2018, and she pretty much does her work mainly in Central Florida. So I'm here to just ask her a couple of questions, learn a little bit more about midwifery, and just get her point of view. So welcome, Nicole, onto the MMH podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. It's such an honor.
Yes, thank you. We are excited as well. So just again, a few questions to ask you for today. So the first one is just tell us a little bit about yourself, your amount of time doing what you do, what you're doing currently. I kind of went a little bit into it, and any other details that you want to share and tell us about.
Yeah, of course. So, yes, my name is Nicole. I'm a Florida licensed midwife. I have been serving families basically from coast to coast all around Central Florida since 2018. It is my life's work, and I'm very proud of it. I am the owner and creator of Mother of Thousands Midwifery, where I offer home birth midwifery care and prenatal and postpartum care with planned hospital delivery. I also do placenta encapsulation, childbirth education, community-centered support groups, those types of things. I also serve as the clinical consultant for the Central Florida Birth Network, and I'm really, really proud of that. And the work that we get to do together to bring access to resources for our community and to also bring more opportunities for birth workers in the community as well. I also serve and have continued serving at my sorority. I'm a member of Mu Sigma Upsilon Sorority Incorporated. So I currently serve
Nice.
at the district level. I've been on the national board, I've been on the district board before, and so I'm really proud to continue to be able to do work that I love with people that I enjoy being around. Um, Midwifery, where do I start with that, right?
Yes.
So essentially I always wanted to work with moms and babies. I was 5 years old when my mom had my younger sister. And so she's a VBAC mom. So I was
Oh,
born via cesarean, and my younger sister, I have two younger sisters, but our middle sister, she was born vaginally. So that at the time, obviously, I didn't have any understanding of that, but I had this really cool understanding of like, wow, like a whole baby came out of you. And so that was really cool to experience. Um, and I mean, I don't talk about this with her very often, but I do remember being younger and watching her experience a second trimester miscarriage. And so as kids, you don't really understand a lot of that stuff. But now that I'm much older and through the work that I do, it really gives me an opportunity to help other people through that experience. Um,
yeah.
but it wasn't until I got much older that I realized that this was really for me because ironically, I'm not good with getting my own blood drawn. And so I always assumed like, how could I possibly like be an OB if I don't know how to even like handle seeing my blood being drawn, you know?
Hmm.
So I kind of dismissed it. And so it wasn't until after I graduated from UCF, I was working hospital administration in a big hospital in Central Florida. And it was there that I realized like I'm not really fulfilled. Some time went by and I realized, holy cow, like you can actually like work with moms and babies without having to do cesareans. Like I went in on that. But before I decided to invest so much of my time and my money, because it's a 3-year program and I was fresh out of college, like I don't want to go to college again. Um,
Yes.
so I decided to become a doula to at least just see that I can handle being in a birth space because I knew there was going to be blood there, obviously.
Hmm.
Um, and so a doula is not the same as a midwife, but they are both very vital roles into the birth team. And so a doula provides non-clinical support for families as they're going through the pregnancy, labor, and delivery and postpartum process. So it was through that first birth actually that I experienced. I witnessed a Black woman being mistreated by a white midwife, and her labor and delivery were severely mishandled.
Wow.
And so she almost died, and she was a friend of mine. She wasn't just some random person off the street. And
Wow.
so that changed everything for me, you know? So from there, I was like, how can I protect the people I love if I don't have any power, you know? And because as a doula, you can say things and you can give suggestions, but you can't be the person in that position to maintain the safety in the area, you know? And
Yes.
so I was like, how can I help the people that I love from experiencing this harm? And so within a month or two, I applied to school, and the rest is history. So essentially, the summer before I started midwifery school, I actually found out that my great 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 grandmother was also a midwife in Puerto Rico. And so,
Wow.
yeah, and so that was so interesting to me because up until that time, my mother's side, nobody is like medically like in the medical field or anything like that. So I always
Mhm.
wondered where that came from for me. But my biological paternal side are full of nurses and stuff. So it wasn't until that time that it clicked for me, like where it came from.
Yeah.
So it's an honor to me to be able to carry that tradition on through my blood for my community. Um, so yeah, that's why I'm here and that's why I do what I do, and I love it every day, even when it's hard.
Wow. That is so awesome. So you're carrying on the torch for, you said great. I don't even know how many greats you said. So how many
My great
generations?
great grandmother. So if I said three, it was supposed to be two. So
Okay.
essentially, what I found out at that time was that she was the midwife for my grandfather and all of his siblings, with the exception, I think, of like one of them.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Nice. Wow. That is awesome.
yeah.
I definitely, yeah, like I definitely feel what you said just about just being there. It started from a familiar experience, trust from your mom, and then from your friend being in that position. So definitely, as far as like MMH is concerned, we do look into that health education and push it across, especially for women of color. Um, but just seeing a real life experience of that happen in your career, especially so early on. So you said that you kind of alluded to it just about like the harder parts of your work. So I just wanted to ask you next, from what you do, what's the best part of your work? And then what's kind of not so much of a highlight?
Yeah, of course. So I guess I'll start with the good stuff, right?
Sure.
Um, for me, community work is my passion. And so my favorite part about it is really working with my families intimately and building relationships with them. I would say not everybody, obviously, you know, because everybody's different, but I have been able to form friendly or like familiar relationships with a lot of my clients. And that is really the origin of where community midwifery came from. You know what I mean? They were your
Mhm.
aunts, your cousins, your grandmas, your moms, and they came into your house and they broke bread with you. They ate with you. They spent time with you and really made sure that you felt nurtured. So that is my favorite part, and that is the way that I practice.
Mhm.
Um, I'm a big fan. I'm a big nerd, so I love to learn new things. I feel like every single client gives me an opportunity to learn something new. Um, I enjoy teaching, and so I like giving education. I enjoy that a lot. Um, and just knowing that I'm doing what I set out to do, you know,
Yeah.
that mom that I was talking about, I'm very close with her. I'm actually the godmother for all of her children. And so
Oh.
we've grown very close for along the years. And so, you know, whenever I have a tough birth that was similar to hers, I always tell her, hey, you know, like I had ABCD happen
Mhm.
and the mom and the baby are okay.
Oh,
And
that is
so
so awesome. Yeah.
and so just knowing that I'm doing what I said I was gonna do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And really walking in that calling has meant a lot to me. And it keeps me going even when it gets hard. The hardest parts, I would say from the business standpoint, just like admin work. I know that's very like shallow thing to say, but like this
Understand.
is my first time obviously owning a business. And
Mhm.
so when you learn about being a midwife, you don't necessarily learn about being a business owner. So it's a very sharp learning curve if you don't have
Yes.
somebody walking you through it, you know?
Sure.
But aside from that, being a midwife can be difficult because it's a lot of talking a lot of people out of the norms that society has led us to believe are true.
Mhm.
Um, things like the hospital is best, which for some people it absolutely is, but for majority of normal, healthy, pregnant people is not. So having to talk about that with people is hard, especially when maybe their families are not super understanding of their choices or are very supportive of their
Yeah.
choices. And so um, having those conversations a lot can be very difficult because some people are not really willing to learn or be receptive to the advantageous benefits that come with having midwifery care, because it isn't just about birthing at home. It's about the experience of having somebody who cares about you, that knows your name, that remembers things about you and your family members, and that wants to take the time to make sure that you have everything that you need.
Yeah.
And really gives the opportunity to dive in and answer questions. So it's so much more than just like being at home versus in the hospital. Turning people away. I hate turning people away. That's one of my hardest things to do because I feel like everybody deserves to have somebody that cares about them.
Hmm.
Um, but I'm only one person and I can't do it all. I have to be realistic about that. I do wear a lot of hats, and so I keep my number small so that way I can wear all of those hats and enjoy it and
Yeah.
also be an active member in society and in my family. That's really important to me. Um, I would say other things that can be harder than that are sometimes dealing with other providers who don't necessarily respect the midwifery model of care or don't understand why it can be such a good thing. Um, but the main thing for me is bad partners,
Hmm. Okay.
unsupportive partners,
Yeah.
partners who are used to seeing women do it all and let them instead of being that person that is really helping to pick up the slack. Um, or watching people suffer. You know what I mean? That's really what's hard for me is um knowing that people deserve better and them not getting the opportunity to experience that. I would also say sometimes working in the hospital sometimes is very frustrating because I've had situations where there's an emergency and I know there's an emergency, but they don't respect my judgment. And
Yeah.
so that can be kind of difficult because then now they're wasting 20 minutes confirming what I have already told them. And then now it's like some major emergency when it's been an emergency for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, those type of things. Also really trying to help people see that there is a better way. And seeing them choose something different is sometimes hard for me because I know that they can have so much better and they choose to do something different, although it's not my experience. So I always support people and I try my best not to judge them. But it is hard for me because I know that people are capable of so much more than what they allow themselves because of what they've been told. And I know a lot of that stems into our childhood and the way that that seeps into us, the way that we've been spoken into, whether we get life spoken into us or not. And that makes a
Definitely.
big impact on the way that we move through our lives. Um, but there are some people that um, think that it is the easy way out, and it is not. In
Yeah.
any way, shape, or form. So really, it's a lot of trying to just combat the status quo and just letting people know that it actually isn't a lot of times the way that they think it is. It's just what society has told them is normal.
Yeah, for sure. And you've really touched on like your approach to really meeting each client, each family where they're at. And
Absolutely.
you kind of, ran the gamut of families who are more agreeable and then those who need a little bit more of support. I wouldn't like to say difficult because, like you said, it is their experience.
Right.
A lot of them are being pregnant for the first time. They don't really know what to expect. So
Right.
I kind of wanted to ask a follow-up question
For
as
sure.
far, so you kind of delved into it when you were talking about your approach working in the hospital versus a home birth or I guess outside of a medical clinic formally. So I wanted to ask you, especially from a doula and a midwife point, right? Because you have both. What helps you to really know when to cross that fine line between standing up and really like going against medical authority or even like an unsupportive partner and kind of asking them or pulling them in to say, hey, your partner is kind of struggling a bit here. Can you please, like, basically, what helps you to use your judgment and know when to cross the line and when to kind of hold back and then maybe wait for an opportune time?
For sure. That's a great question. So really it's trial and error. That's the truth.
Okay.
Because I'm a very I can be very like assertive. And
Hmm.
so sometimes it is very easy to come off like, I'm sure you're very familiar with like the trope of like Black and brown women coming off like they're having attitude when they're really just trying to be upfront with you. I have dealt
Yes.
with that a lot amongst midwifery peers, particularly white women. That has been a very big issue for me.
Hmm.
Um, but in the sense of like in the hospital, so like I tell all my clients, and I tell people in general, I cannot convince you to have a home birth. If you want, you have to want to do it. It's not anything about what I say or what I do. I can give you all of the information and you choose to do with it what you will.
Hmm.
That is part of midwifery, is giving people access to all of the options that are accessible to them and supporting them regardless of what they decide.
Yeah.
So I say that to everybody, right? Now I do also tell people that at the same time, I cannot guarantee that you will have a home birth. I can guarantee that as your midwife, I will keep you safe and I will give you all of the information that you need. And that if I am no longer in a position where I can keep you safe, that I will give you the recommendation to bring you to safety.
Okay.
And so my priorities are safe mom, safe baby, vaginal birth, home birth, in that order.
Okay.
So once we get to the hospital, and they know this well beforehand because we talk about this a lot in our visits. Once we get to the hospital, I am no longer considered to be your primary provider. So I can give you
Mhm.
all of the information that you need. And that's when I kind of move into that doula role, right? So I can give you all of the information that you need, but there is only so much advocating that I can do. So I can speak up and I will, but at the same time, they may not necessarily see what I'm saying in comparison to the way that you are. So I'll give you an example. If we're in the hospital, for example, I do talk to clients a lot that are having inductions, that their protocol is that they will start off with Pitocin and they raise it every 30 to 60 minutes, whether or not you consent to that.
Wow. I did not
And
know that.
so it is right. And
Wow.
they will wait until you're not looking to do it. They will not ask you. They will, but the thing is that if you're in an induction and you have Pitocin and you're having regular, consistent contractions that are putting you in the direction of progressing your labor to having a normal, successful vaginal birth, you do not need to raise that Pitocin.
Right.
And there are studies that say that putting on too much Pitocin can cause increased distress and can lead to the increased rate of cesareans in hospitals.
Oh my goodness.
So there's so much information that people
Yes.
don't, so at the end of the day, if I have to speak up, I absolutely will. Um, but my goal is to give clients all of the information that they need so that way they can uncover the power themselves, because ultimately the client has power over every single decision that happens.
Yeah.
They are the judge, jury, and executioner, and nobody else should be involved in that process except for the people that made that baby.
Correct. Definitely agree with that.
So so mostly it's like that. So in that situation, for example, with the Pitocin, um, when the nurse came in and she bumped it up, I said something to them after she left the room. I said, hey, they bumped it up. And this is the same thing that we had talked about before. They will likely continue to do that. So when they came in the next time, I actually wasn't in the room at the time, and they bumped it up, and the husband saw it. And the husband said, you're going to put it back down and you're not going to raise it again without asking for our permission.
Wow. See that advocacy.
Right. And the thing is that this mom was actually a nurse in the same hospital.
Are you serious?
Yes.
That is
And not on the
insane.
same unit, but she was, but she wanted things to be done a certain way. And
Hmm.
when things go differently than the birth plan, it's already like very mentally stressful for the parents.
Yeah.
because we cannot predict the way that birth will go. We can kind of just roll with the punches as we go and make the best of what we have as it comes along, you know?
Hmm.
So in that moment, it was very frustrating for her because she's just trying to do her best and she's not even given the proper opportunity. And her labor was progressing quite normally without the Pitocin. So essentially, they actually never raised it again. And she delivered, I think, like
It was
6 hours
fine.
after that at a very normal rate for a first time mom. Her labor, this was her first baby, and her labor was less than 24 hours.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is technically better, whatever that means, than average for a first time mom with an induction, because sometimes an induction can last several days. It can take several days.
Yeah. Do the
So for
opposite.
her to start the induction process and have a baby in that same day is a big deal.
Yeah.
Especially for a first time mom. So, but again, that just goes into like letting people make the decisions, and they can make the decisions that are best for themselves if they have all of the information.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, I have made comments before, but it is a very thin line, like you say, because in some instances, unfortunately, nurses and OBs can be retaliatory, and consider you to be combative or consider you to be non-compliant. And so then they
Hmm.
choose to treat you worse. Um, and all you're trying to do is just labor in peace, you know?
Right.
Um, so it's definitely something difficult to navigate. When it comes to having less than supportive partners, there's only so much I can do about that, but I do have a lot of conversations with with the moms about being honest about what they need.
Okay.
Um, and saying, "Hey, I need more from you." Unfortunately, there are people that think that having your feet rubbed and like getting your favorite pregnancy craving is too much to ask, which is really unfortunate because moms go through so much to grow their babies and push them out of their bodies and
Yeah.
then figure out who they are now with this new person as they're recovering from this massive marathon of having a baby. And then there's their partner who like wants to go watch football. And I love that you want to go watch football, but honey, take your baby with you so your wife can go take a nap or a shower.
Yeah.
You
Something.
know what I mean? Or record the game and watch it later. Like, I don't know. You know what I mean? And I'm a football person. You know what I mean? So I'm not against football. Football is fine. But yeah, and but then also being honest about the type of support that you need.
Yeah.
Also having those conversations before you have children is really important. But I always encourage everybody to bring their partners to the visits because I'm not scared to tell the partner that they need to be showing up more for their client.
Hmm. But
Or for their partner. I don't have an issue with telling them like, hey, like when she has this baby, you know, you have to do everything else. She is literally sustaining this child's life with her body for the
hmm.
last 10 months. And then after that, for however long she chooses to feed the baby with her body.
Yep.
And she's going to be essentially in the bed recovering from a major thing that happened.
Yeah.
And so it's important for them to feel supported in those moments. And so a lot of dads ask, what can I do? And the answer is very simple. It's everything else. So
Mm.
she shouldn't have to. So that water jug needs to be full. That snack basket needs to be full. Those dishes need to be in the dishwasher. That laundry needs to be done. And if you don't have the capacity to do that, then hire a postpartum doula.
Yeah.
Hire a postpartum doula. But a lot of that stuff for the postpartum goes into planning in the prenatal period. So a lot of what I talk to my clients about too is preparing for that period. And that's meal prepping. That's having all of the supplies that you already need readily available. That's having a conversation with your partner about what you need and how you need it. And now 100%, you're not going to know what you need until it's time, but having that conversation at least about what they can expect and the way that they need to be showing up and showing out for their partner is a priority. They're not only doing that for their partner, but they should be setting an example from the very beginning for their children. And so having that conversation is important. We talk a lot about, breaking generational curses, and it starts now. It
For
starts in
sure.
those conversations that happen from the very beginning. And so, yeah, those conversations are absolutely uncomfortable. But at the end of the day, I'm willing to be uncomfortable for a few minutes if it's going to make my client get the comfort that they need for however long they need it,
Yeah, for
you
sure.
know? Uh, so yeah, it's not easy. Obviously it's give and take. So, maybe, not saying something this time, but saying something next time, and definitely
Mhm.
taking a moment to talk about the positives before talking about the negatives, right? Because it's never my goal to let anybody feel like they're not doing a good job, and letting
Yeah,
them know like everybody shows up a certain way, but being honest with each other about how you show up in your relationship and what that's going to look like for your postpartum is a conversation that needs to be had. And if it needs to be had over and over again, then that's fine.
yeah,
But like you said, meeting people where they're at. But I talk to my clients the way that I talk to my own family members. And I'm like, hey, like, I get it, but there is a different way. And so yeah, just letting people know that there is so much more than what meets the eye, but that everybody is capable. You just
yeah,
have to want to. That's really the thing.
for sure. I definitely love that, just that positive approach and just
Yeah.
positive, room for improvement, but positive nonetheless that you guys are doing a good job, you're trying, but there's a
Right.
better way to improve and to elevate your experience.
Right.
So, the next thing that I wanted to ask was, you again kind of delved into it, but what is maybe one or what are two things that you want listeners to know about midwives? And it doesn't necessarily have to be like doula versus a midwife, but just the uniqueness of the midwifery profession.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and of course,
Um,
this is a time as well. Like if you would like to speak in Spanish, because I know that we have some Spanish Hispanic listeners. We have a Latina community, so feel free to go in and out as you please.
okay, thank you.
Yes.
um, so I don't even know where to start. So,
Yeah.
let's see. So if I only say one or two things, I would say that home birth is not new or trendy. Um,
Yes.
White obstetricians stole our skills from our ancestors and then charged us more to perform them in the hospital. Less
That is a
well.
risque statement, but you know what? It kind of makes sense.
And if you look at midwifery history, not just in America, but really in many other places, midwives were unfortunately considered to be the poor route, and that's absolutely not true because hospitals have only been doing births for maybe the last 80 to 90 years.
Very true.
Um, and midwives have been doing this since the beginning of time.
Yeah.
And if you look in the history, it wasn't about how rich you were or how much money you made. Midwives came to you. And back then, sure, it wasn't about money, but they traded in livestock, they traded in services, they traded in, they bartered. And I am also a big fan of bartering. I feel like I try to bring that back as much as I can, and I'm a big fan of it. And I love being able to trade services with my clients for services. Um,
Wow. Nice.
yeah, I love it actually. One of my clients right now, her partner is a mechanic and he's done my brakes, my rotors, he's done my oil change, he's gonna do my wheel bearings. Like he
See?
honestly, and it was a lot of stuff I wasn't gonna get done on my car. So I'm very grateful that they're able to help me and that I'm able to help them, and it makes it more accessible for them.
Yes, that is awesome.
So sorry, that was not what we're talking about.
No, it's okay.
But essentially, those skills were taken away from us. And if you look at home birth history in America, you know, it's not just about slavery. All of our families came from midwives. And it turned into slavery when white men and white women didn't agree with wanting to deal with messiness in birth. And
Mm,
that's when it turned into something that they made people do, or that they used those skills from midwives that they took from Africa and then used those skills, right? And if you look at the history of midwifery in America, essentially what they did is that they learned from them and then created schools to regulate the profession and
yep.
essentially took that away from everybody that taught them.
That's
and then
insane.
made it seem like it was better to do it in the hospitals, right? And
Hmm.
so we talk about, like, there are actually video documentaries where they say that this baby passed away because they were delivered by a grand midwife that was deacon dirty, but they don't wash their hands. They talk about it in the history books. They talk about the invention of literally washing your hands regularly in order to prevent infection from spreading between patient to patient. Okay. This is, you can Google it, it's there. Okay.
Hmm.
It's not a secret.
Yeah.
Okay. But essentially, what they did was is that they blamed them. And so they created this model of care that was better for everyone, supposedly. And because they took this opportunity away from people who had been doing it for much longer than them, they essentially criminalized midwifery. Okay. Then we move into the 60s to the 70s, where white men and women were like, hey, this isn't cool. And then what happened is that they regurgitated midwifery. So they basically made it cool again in America, even though it was already here the whole time. Okay.
Wow.
But then they created, of course, their own organizations and made it harder for Black midwives to be able to become regulated in those programs. Because remember, we're still in Jim Crow time. So you can't get into this program,
Yeah.
you can't do this, or you can, but you don't get access to the same resources. And that still spills in to midwifery skills in schools today. Okay. When
Yeah.
I graduated from midwifery school, I was the only Latina in my class. I had two Black classmates. I'm pretty sure that the first Black midwife to graduate from that program was like 10 years ago. That school's been open since I think like the 90s or something.
That's crazy.
It's a joke. It's
But
horrible. You
yeah,
know what I mean? And
it's
so
real.
statistically, in the United States, only I think about 2% of midwives are Black.
2%.
When I'd say about 100 years ago, I'd say about maybe 90% of the births that were happening were delivered by Black midwives.
There you go.
So that's the truth of the matter. So if that was the one thing I would say, that would be the one thing I would say.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, that's the history of of midwifery. But that isn't how it has to be.
Yeah.
We are now in a position where we can take that power back. We just have to do it, you know?
Hmm.
And giving people that look like us an opportunity to see people that look like them in the delivery room through their prenatal care, in the postpartum period. Um, so that's a priority to me.
Yeah.
That's why I'm here and that's what I do what I do. You know, that wasn't the original thought that brought me here, but it's a thought that kept me here and it's a thought that keeps me moving today. Um, so yeah, my ultimate thing to say is that you're capable. If you have a solid support system, you can really do anything you set your mind to. We do need more Black and brown midwives so that way our people can feel safe. And
For sure.
that's the start and the end.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely agreed with that. Is there anything else you wanted to say on that? I mean, that was loaded in itself, and I think it's like a mic drop moment. But
Sorry.
no, this is what we need to hear. Like what midwifery as we know it, right? The model is as old as time, as you said, but the refinement of that model originally is what we're kind of battling against, and we're trying to bring back the basics in
For
essence.
sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right.
Um,
Oh, go ahead.
so yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I would say too, I guess my favorite Spanish phrase to use, and I'm about to put it on a shirt too.
Ooh,
Si
okay.
quieres hacerlo, puedes hacerlo. Like if you want to do it, you can do it.
You can do
And
it.
that's that on that.
That is that on that, my sister. Yes. Okay. And the next question I have, you alluded to it with your friend, just having like a memorable experience, but what is one experience, whether when you first started or even recently, that you could tell us about that you've
Okay.
had in your career?
So I guess when I thought about what I was gonna say,
Hmm.
for this question, I realized that I wanted to talk about just the origin of my practice, I guess. I know that sounds kind of selfish, but really it was inspired by a client. So that's why I was like, okay, well, it was really a turning point for me for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
Let's hear it.
and at the time I was working for a birth center. And at the time I already knew that I eventually wanted to have my own practice. But I didn't know what it would be called. I didn't know, how I was going to go about it. I had dreams about it all the time, and so I knew that it was
Wow.
coming. But I never had like it was never laid out for me. It was always like you're gonna have it, but you get to discover how on your own.
Yeah.
And so one day I went to a home visit for a client that was at the birth center but was planning a home birth. And she was actually Black and Puerto Rican. And
Oh,
her mom was Puerto Rican, and so her mom reminded me a lot of my grandma. So while I was there, she like made me eat, and like of course gave me a whole tour of the house. And it was that moment that I realized like this is what I want my practice to look. And that was like I was saying before, like taking our time and focusing on building that relationship and eating together and planning out what things are going to look like together,
yeah.
and really being a part of that experience. Um, and so it was during that day, actually, because I'm a plant mom. I have many, many, many plants.
Okay.
At the time, I didn't have any. I was a novice in comparison. And so she took me to her patio where she had this beautiful array of plants all over the place. She sent me home with all of these clippings for various different plants, which I still have, thank God, because some of them have passed on, but
No.
all of them are still alive. Remember, I was in office at the time. And so that was when I got my first Mother of Thousands plant. So Mother of Thousands is actually a plant. And
Oh,
so the way that it looks is that it has big green leaves, and on the edges of the leaves, they grow little flowers on them.
oh my
And so when
gosh.
they get a certain size, if they get knocked by the wind or somebody knocks them over, or it rains too hard or whatever, they fall to the ground. And wherever they fall, they will grow. Okay, I've seen them grow in the middle of nowhere. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
So that was the first day I ever got that plant. And so it wasn't until about 2 or 3 months later where I was actually on a hike with one of my really good friends, and I told her it was actually on that hike that I realized I was like, I'm gonna do this. I'm not gonna renew my contract at the birth center, and I'm gonna open my own practice. What should I name it? So I spent like the rest of the hike on my phone, like thinking about what names I was gonna name my practice.
Hmm.
And I'm nerdy, so I wanted a moniker. And I'm like, okay, so I went into the dictionary. I went on the dictionary on my phone and just looked at the letter M and just went all the way down, right? And so I kept
Yeah.
thinking of like things I would use, and I was like, I don't like this, I don't like this. And then I thought to myself, and then I saw mother, and I'm like, Mother of Thousands. And I was like, oh my God, that's perfect. And then I was like, but it might be too long. And I was like, no, it's gonna be fine. So essentially that's it. And so the way that I've been able to cultivate my practice, or the way that I use that philosophy, is like the plant, to leave a little bit of love everywhere you go.
That's amazing. I
And
love
so
that.
yeah, and it's also about resilience, right? In the way that
Yeah.
like those flowers are able to grow wherever they are.
Yeah. Anywhere.
And right, and so in the face of resilience, in the face of having choices, you have the choice to grow wherever you are.
Yeah.
And so it just started to make sense immediately for me, and I was like, yeah, that's it. And literally the same day I applied for the LLC. So
It's amazing.
so yeah, that's where I am, and that's why I practice the way that I do. And but it all started because of a client that looked like me.
Yeah.
And that helped me to see that I was where I needed to be.
Yeah.
So
Wow. That
yeah.
is that's
And she
so
went on to have
amazing.
just the most amazing home birth ever. I was so happy for her. I was really glad I got to be the midwife at her birth, but she did amazing.
Yeah, yeah. That is so cool. Like you touched on it several times, even just in this time that we're talking, but that patient provider concordance, like just my provider looks like me, he or she has the same culture, like we share the same culture, we share the same language. A lot of those similarities can help to push and do push out better health outcomes. So I just love that that was just the inspiration. Again, you didn't expect to find it in your client or your client's mother, right? Who
Hmm.
was Puerto Rican, but you found it. And here we go. It gave birth at that time, it gave rise or it gave birth to the inspiration for your practice, and you're doing the same. So, wow. That's like mother of thousands plant in action through
Yeah,
people.
yeah, essentially, yeah. So I'm really proud of it. I'm really proud of it. Um,
Yeah.
and I am honored to be able to care for my clients the way that I do. And obviously, like, I don't only serve Latinas, or I don't only serve
Hmm.
Black women. I have a very um diverse client base, and I'm very, very proud of that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if I'm giving referrals, it's going to be for a Black pediatrician. It's going to be for a Black IBCLC. It's going to be for a Black doula. If that's what my client wants, I'm going to get her that.
Yeah.
And sometimes I do butt heads doing that. I went into a Facebook group one time and was like, hey, I'm looking for a Black pediatrician. The one I know of, she's not taking anybody right now, so I need somebody else. And everybody was like, why would you want a Black pediatrician? Please, please.
You're
So,
about to be canceled.
right. So it happens, but at the end of the day, I want my clients to feel as comfortable as possible, and I want that to look like whatever they want it to look like.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I just love that, it seems, and I do see that the people that are most effective in their profession usually, well, I don't want to say usually birth work, but what I see mainly in birth work, there needs to be that assertion, that there needs to be like that assertiveness to stand up for what is right, what is ethical, what works for your client. So far, it's legal, and just getting them what they need to have that great experience, great health outcome, like I said earlier, and just really just thrive, like thrive within this specific phase in their lives, and even after once that phase is concludes. So.
Right.
Yeah. So, going along with a little bit about your business. So, your business actually started in what year?
Actually, I'm still in my first year, so I opened my practice in
Oh,
December.
okay. Nice.
But I've been a midwife for 2 years, and I've been attending births since 2018. So
Yes, yes.
yeah, I would say that in my time as a birth worker, I supported over 300 families, and I will do
Awesome.
it until the day I die, or until the day I cannot anymore.
Oh, that is so
Honestly.
amazing. Yeah. So I was gonna ask, like, where can people find you? I know you're based in Florida. That's where
Hmm.
you work mostly, but where can people find you online? If you have a website, or how can
Yes.
people connect to you?
Yes. So on Instagram, it's just Mother of Thousands Midwifery, spelled this way.
We will put it in the description as well, so don't
Um,
worry.
and and I'm also on Facebook under Mother of Thousands Midwifery as well.
Awesome.
My website is still under construction, but when it is ready, it will be motmidwifery.com.
Okay.
And I'm also on LinkTree at Mother of Thousands Midwifery as well. And that's where you can find my consultation link, informational resources, information for placenta encapsulation, and also The Morning After, which is actually a book that talks about what happens after um, Black maternal health outcomes do not go the way that we anticipate them to. It's actually a book that is written by Bell, who we were just talking about before.
Yes.
And she's amazing, and she's just a pioneer in trying to bring better outcomes for Black maternal health overall. And she's such an inspiration to me and the way that I work, and the things that I do. And so yeah, I had to shout her out a little bit, and her link
Okay.
is on my link tree as well. Reading it, it's right here.
Oh, nice.
Here. I'm not sure if, hold on. I don't think it'll let me because of the background, but this is the book, and this is the cover. Isn't it so beautiful?
Yes, it's showing like yes, we do definitely
But
see
yeah,
it.
it's
But
called The Morning After, the personal and professional effects of the Black infant in maternal health crisis. So
yes.
it's a beautiful book, and I'm very proud to share this with people.
Yes, that is awesome. And Zay will be actually coming on our podcast very soon. So
That's
this is a
awesome.
great prelude to her coming on. And you just made my excitement like go up 10 times more just to speak with her. But yes, so all of that will be linked. We will put your social media handles, of course, so people can follow you, connect with you. If they're in the Central Florida area, especially like that Orlando area, get connected to you and possibly use you as
Yes.
a service and just
Yes. And I
keep.
would also say too that the Central Florida Birth Network, you can go to centralfloridabirthnetwork.org, and
Mhm.
they have actually a directory and a specific code that you can put in for providers of color. And so it is
Oh,
easier to just find across the board people that are in line with the network, so it's more easily accessible for clients. It's
perfect.
easier for them to find. So if you're looking specifically for a Black midwife, definitely check out centralfloridabirthnetwork.org. Um, but there are also Black midwives in our area. Triana, there's Brenda. They're both amazing people. Obviously, Jenny Joseph, with the Birthplace Common Sense childbirth. She's amazing. She's a pioneer for Black midwifery in the United States. She's the owner of
Wow.
the only nationally accredited Black midwifery school in the country, and it's here in Orlando. So it's
Ah, that's
a great
amazing.
resource. Yeah, it's definitely been a great resource for people in our area to get more accessible midwifery schooling that is more culturally competent in comparison, really.
Yeah, very important. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you for also the other gems that you put in there, shouting out
Hey, look,
people.
what is the expression about like climate reach? You know what I mean? Like this is for
Yes,
everybody. You know what I mean? And if there's and what you're supposed to do is bring everybody with you, right? I'm no leader without the people that have led me to where I am.
for sure.
So you know, if I can plug people in, I want to, you know,
Yeah.
and they're way bigger than me. I'm just a midwife, you know. So
Ah, you're not just a midwife. You are extensive in what you're doing. Like, what are you
thank
talking
you.
about? But yeah, so that's pretty much all of the serious stuff. I just wanted to end off this talk today with what's a fun fact that you want to tell us about yourself
Let's see, what's exciting about me? I like
beside
to
the plant
garden,
mom?
which we talked about already, right?
Yes.
But I like to hike, like I was saying before. I actually hiked the AT Approach Trail, the Appalachian Approach Trail, which is the first eight and a
Wow.
half miles before the approach trail starts, or before the trail starts. So the trail itself is like over 1,000 miles or something. But the approach trail is the first 8.5 miles before. And so essentially, if you start all the way at the bottom, you essentially hike the entirety of Springer Mountain. And then at the peak of Springer Mountain is where the Appalachian Trail starts. And if
Oh
you
my
start at the
gosh.
bottom, it's at a waterfall called Nicolle Falls. It's actually a state park, and it's one of the biggest waterfalls in Georgia. It's absolutely gorgeous, but it is like 750 steps to climb up the entire thing, and that's before the approach trail even starts. So you can start at the top of the waterfall if you don't want to walk the 750 steps, which I didn't know at the time. Um, but it was such an amazing experience. Um, and so yeah, I love to be able to learn about nature. I
Mhm.
am a beginner herbalist. That means that I literally just took my first like herbal training education course. So that way I can start to be able to provide those remedies and feel more confident about the way that I'm delivering those to my clients.
Yeah.
And also, I ideally would like to use my gardening experience to be able to grow my own herbs and produce. So that way, eventually, that's one less thing that my clients have to worry about. I can just pull it from my yard and give it to them.
I see that's like a big thing now. A lot of people are starting to grow their own stuff free
Yeah.
of
Oh, yeah.
chemicals.
In my backyard, we have avocado trees. We have a lime tree. We have peppers. And then I am in the process of growing two types of cherry trees. One is called an acerola tree, which is native to Puerto Rico. I mean, it's more like Caribbean. And then
Mhm.
also a Jamaican cherry tree, which
Oh,
is honestly on its last leg. I'm trying my best. But
you're being
but
honest.
I stopped, it's been raining so much here that I just haven't been watering the plants because I've been assuming that God has been doing it for me. But that in fact was not the case. So I went like 3 days without watering them, and now like all of the leaves have died. So I'm like, no. So so you live and you learn. What can you do?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so that's what I do. um,
Wow. Okay. So very much in tune with the nature side. That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
Um, honestly, this was such a great interview, but are there any last parting words that you would like to leave with our listeners before we?
Well, of course, I'm happy and grateful to be here. I
Yes.
hope that I have been able to encourage some research, right? Some investigative knowledge or, some dinner table conversations.
Yeah.
I really enjoy being able to provide care, and I enjoy being able to provoke good, healthy conversation, right?
Hmm.
Because it is not a me versus you, it is not an us versus them, it is an us versus the issue type
Yeah.
of situation. And so when you approach it that way, we all can succeed together. Um, so that's really important to me. Um, People deserve to be cared for in the way that they see fit.
Yeah.
There is a midwife for everyone. There is a doula for everyone. There are people that practice differently than me, and that's totally okay. There are people that are more hands off, or because I'm a pretty hands off person myself in terms of the way that I provide midwifery care.
Hmm.
Obviously, I take your vitals and I listen to your baby, but aside from that, unless you need me, I stay back in a corner and I just watch. I
Do your
maybe will
thing.
hold the camera for you if you'd like, but other than that, I'm not here to steal the glory, okay? I'm not here to deliver your baby. I'm not here to do any of that stuff, actually. I'm just here to oversee your safety.
Yeah.
And I was actually just talking to I was at a birthday dinner with some birth workers yesterday, and we were having a conversation about like everybody being so excited, like younger midwives being so excited about catching babies and that dynamic that goes by during your midwifery career. And you learn about how like it really isn't about you.
Yeah.
And so like for me, I haven't caught a baby since October. And that baby needed to be caught by me because there was a serious emergency happening.
Yeah.
But other than that, I actually don't have to have my hands do anything. I can
Yeah.
sit there and I can watch, and if the client needs help, I will help her. But she can catch her own baby. She can make sure, you know what I mean?
That's right.
She can deliver her own placenta. She did all that by herself. She don't need me to do it.
Yeah.
So long as everything is normal, of course, right? We have those conversations. If there's an emergency, I will absolutely do what I need to do.
Yeah.
But also, there is many more benefits to sitting on your hands and letting them make the decisions themselves than making the decisions for them because it's not about you. It's about them.
Definitely. Definitely.
Um, but yeah, just trying to, like you said, meeting people where they're at and going from there. You know what I mean? Being upfront, right? So asking specifically, what can I do to support you? And then actually supporting them in the way that they need.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I'm so honored to be here. I'm so honored to get to do what I
Yay.
love every day. And I'm so honored to be surrounded by a very solid support system that allows me to do what I love every day.
Yeah.
Um, but my greatest takeaway is that everybody has the power to do what they want to do.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be home birth. You can have a beautiful, natural, hands-off birth in the hospital. You have to fight for it, but you can get it.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be at home. Um, but there are a lot of benefits. And if you talk to people that have had a hospital birth and then had a home birth, it's a very big difference.
Very big.
And you'd have to be there to know. You know what I mean? I can't convince you, but I can show you.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, Nicolle, thank you so much. This was super informative, especially the piece about just briefly going through that history of midwifery. I think a lot of people don't really know the nuances that are involved in that history. So thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for taking out time to be here
Thank
today.
you.
Again, this is MMH, Mama's Maternity Home. This is our podcast. You can see us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter at Mama's Maternity. We also have this podcast. We have our LinkTree, so that will be in the description, as well as Nicolle's information so that you could reach out to her, connect with her, and just follow along with the greatness that she's doing. So thank you
Thank
once
you so
again.
much.
We will speak soon.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
All righty.